We're on the plane almost to New York, and Paul McCartney is beside me, and this interview is for Margaret Ann Snyder, Paul. She saw you in Baltimore. She waved to you, and she thinks that she saw you wave to her.
Of course I did. I remember her now very well. Margaret Ann Schneider, there she was, looking a picture, looking like a vision. And she waved, and I thought, that's Margaret Ann Schneider, I thought, shouting. So I thought, well, I better wave back, hadn't I? And with a gay wave of my hand, I waved back. Of course, I'd recognize her anywhere. She's the girl with the long fur hair, and her father's got a little black penknife. I know her anywhere. Yes.
Paul, I know that she'd like to see you in New York, but you're going to have to leave tomorrow, so I'll bet she'll even be waving from Baltimore when you're leaving from New York.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll wave from New York.
All right.
And if she waves from Baltimore, we might see each other on telly.
Fine. And if I see her, I'll be sure and then send your personal message to her, right?
Okay, give her my love then, Art. Lots of love, Margaret Ann Schneider. Goodbye, and I'll see you.
And by the way,
yes?
My wife Alice, who you met in Cleveland and was very sorry she didn't meet the rest of you, she said to me on the phone this morning, be sure and tell Paul I said hello. So I think there's something going there.
Yes, well, we've got something going. Me and Alice, don't worry. Okay, Alice, don't tell Art, but I'll meet you tonight. Okay, Alice? Right. Keep it quiet, though, Alice. See you, Alice. Lots of love. Don't tell Art, though.
And that was Paul McCartney. And when I got back to Cleveland, I had not that part about Alice, but I had the part about Margaret Ann Snyder put on a cassette. I didn't have a note. I just sent it to my boss in Washington, D.C. About a week later, Jim called me. He said, we had a babysitter last night. I took the babysitter home, and he said, when I went by Margaret Ann's room, I thought I heard something. I pushed the door open, and she was laying there wide awake with the tape recorder by her ear, and she looked up at me and said, he said my name. He said my name. Folks, that saved my career. There's one other tape I won't. There are so many stories and so many events. It was a very difficult assignment, but one that I never ever dreamed that almost 50 years later, I would be standing in La Vita Jena talking about the Beatles. And for your information, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland has contacted me. Of course, they want my scrapbook in the worst way, but they are trying to arrange, and I have told them, I said, I may not last that long. The 50th anniversary will be in in 14. They are trying to arrange an event on September 17th, which was the concert in Cleveland, and that will be the 50th anniversary of the Cleveland concert. They would like to get Paul, Ringo, and me together in Cleveland, Ohio. I'll take questions. I cannot see, of course, your hand, so I guess just speak up, or Kate.
I've got the microphone,
okay.
Art. So let's see any hands, any questions we have for Art. Nobody has a question. Erica has a question.
Of course, when you are on tour with them, I wasn't even born yet. However, and I think it was the first soundbite, Art, you mentioned that Paul was going to marry somebody else and her name.
Yes, at that time there was a big talk about, and he was seeing Jane Asher in Great Britain. They ended up not marrying, but that was the rumor. And of course, when you mentioned that he was going to marry Jane Asher, teenagers all over just wilted. I mean, nobody wanted Paul to marry. They wanted Paul. Yeah.
Go ahead, Al.
All right.
I'll have it. What's the name of the girls that you trained? I was trying to think about them this morning, but I can't. You tell me the name of the prominent names in the news business that came out later.
Let's
Thank
see,
you, John. Thank you. And it was always nice
at
to get
NBC,
with you along the way.
folks help me. She is on the campaign now. Married the head of the feds, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea Mitchell, I started out in Philadelphia. She was a desk assistant. You know, we used to call them copy boys. And when Women's Lib came in, when we started hiring women in the business, we named them desk assistants. And Andrea was a desk assistant, and that meant they changed the paper on the teletype machines, et cetera, the ribbons, got coffee for all the news guys. And, you know, there were very few women. I hired Simpson. What was her? For Carol Simpson, if you remember her, a black woman on ABC. I gave her her first job in Chicago. And when no one was hiring women as reporters. And Carol, there's a bit on the internet where she thanks me for what I did for her career. But it was great, you know, seeing those Andrea and Carol and many, many others that started out years ago and are now could buy and sell me and everybody in here. Okay.
Okay, another question?
Hi, Art. It's Genevieve from Wellness. And I wanted to know, do you have a particular favorite moment from the tour?
Yeah, yes, I probably do. I think it was, and here's what happened. When we went down the turnpike, the Jersey Turnpike from Forest Hills back to Atlantic City, when in the first place, the bus stopped. Now, this is my favorite moment. I'm coming to it. But the bus stopped on the freeway, on the Jersey Turnpike, and the bus pulled off and stopped. And we didn't know what. Well, here the Righteous Brothers, who were on the first part of the tour, they weren't on the whole tour. They had missed the bus, and they hired a cab to chase the bus down the Jersey Turnpike. And by God, the cab driver got that bus driver to how, I don't know, but got him to pull over. No cell phones, folks, in those days. No way to communicate except, you know, with flashlights or headlights or whatever. But anyway, the Righteous Brothers got on the bus. Okay, now we go down to Atlantic City. Well, guess what? They'd had no room for yours truly. And the man said to me, he said, Mr. Schreiber, we'll have a room for you tomorrow, but we'll put you down in a hotel down the boardwalk. Well, I knew what that meant. It was going to be a flea bag. And then I see another man standing there, and here it was George Harrison, not the Beatles, but George Harrison, the correspondent, who was one of the three British correspondents that traveled with us. George Harrison had the same name as the Beatles, no relation. And he didn't have a room. So now they send George and I down, and sure enough, it was a flea bag. And so I said to George, I said, we'll meet in the morning in the lobby, and we'll go back up. We did, and we got a cab. And of course, you can imagine when we told the cab driver the Lafayette Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue, well, he said, oh, God, that's where the Beatles are. I can't do that. I said, get as close as you can. Well, he couldn't get very close, you know. And now, believe it or not, folks, George Harrison, the correspondent, had on his, and the suitcase looked like it came out of the British Revolution. It was the oldest, most dilapidated suitcase I had ever seen. And he had written in paint, white paint, G. Harrison, across the suitcase. And okay, now the cab driver put our bags in the trunk. I kept you always keep your tape recorder. And cab driver says, this is the best I can do. Well, we're surrounded already by teenagers screaming. And okay, now, because they don't know who we are, but we may be somebody important to them. Okay, now we get out. The cab driver opens the trunk. And, well, all hell broke loose. Those girls saw G. Harrison. The next thing I know, and I was lucky, I was still standing. George Harris, the cab driver first, was